The expression above can be rewritten as, okay, so what we're doing here is rewriting this expression here. And in order to do that, the first thing we can actually do in this case is get rid of the 4's because the 4 exists everywhere in this expression. So I'm just going to divide every term by 4. So negative 4 divided by 4 is going to be negative 1. Negative 4 again divided by 4 is going to be negative 1. I is going to stay. And this right here divided by 4 is going to be 1i. So I can rewrite this expression as negative 1 minus I over I, right? And that doesn't actually look like any of our expressions here, so we have to keep going here. So we're starting with negative 1 minus I over I. And in order to do this, what I'm going to do is something called rationalization. And to rationalize it, I'm going to multiply it by a creatively chosen one. So I'm going to multiply this by I over I. That's what I'm going to do. And it's a very creatively chosen one because you can multiply anything by 1 and you're still perfectly fine, right? So here we go. So I is going to be distributed. So I times negative 1 is going to be negative I. And I times negative I is going to be minus I squared. And that's going to be divided by I times I, which is I squared. And remember, our pattern for working with i's is I is equal to I, right? I squared is going to be equal to negative 1. Then I cubed is going to be equal to negative I. And then I to the 4th is going to be equal to 1. And that pattern will continue. So I to the 5th is going to be equal to I to the 6th is going to be equal to negative 1. Oh, negative 1. I to the 7th is going to be equal to negative I, and so on. This pattern will continue. So in this case, we know that I squared is going to be equal to negative 1. So this becomes negative I minus I squared, which is negative 1, divided by I squared, which is negative 1. Just like that. You have to be disciplined in your parentheses and maintaining your negative signs here. All right, and we keep going. So this turns into negative I plus 1 over negative 1. And because we're dividing everything by negative 1, it's the same as multiplying by negative 1 in this case. So we're going to change the signs on everything so that this bottom becomes negative, this bottom becomes positive, and it goes away. So this is the same as, and you can think of it a different way too, right? What I can do is I can just multiply the whole thing by negative 1 times negative 1, right? Or negative 1 over negative 1, negative 1 over negative 1, just like that. And that's going to become negative 1 times negative I is going to be equal to I. And 1 times negative 1 is going to be equal to negative 1 over 1. And so I minus 1 over 1 is the same as I minus 1. So the correct answer in this case is going to be D.